and we are going to be talking Raila Odinga, the end of an era, legacy, leadership, and the future of Kenya's politics, as well as the further landscape across East Africa. Just a reminder that former Kenyan Prime Minister Raila Odinga was pronounced dead yesterday in India, where he had spent 5 days receiving treatment after being flown there from Nairobi. Reports that have been coming through indicate that he was admitted at a hospital that is named Sridi Hariam Ayurvedic Eye Hospital, a research center in Kalam, where he had been receiving the treatment for 5 days. He was later taken to Devamatha Hospital in Kalam, some 46 kilometers from Kochi, where he was pronounced dead. Now, it's being reported that he suffered a heart attack after going for a walk, and minutes into that particular walk, he suffered that heart attack that ended his life. But also reports that have been coming in and revelations that the center is famed for practicing what is described as Ayurveda, a traditional Indian system of medicine practiced at that particular center that focuses on preserving health and wellness through balancing mind, body, and spirit, and preventing illness rather than treating it. Now, many of us do know that across the globe, there are so many forms of treatments that are administered onto people. Sometimes the causes of illness themselves are an unbalanced mindset, body, but also issues with the spirit. This particular Ayurveda, the traditional Indian system, tries to tackle that particular issue before the diseases come through. We'll be speaking to Honorable Benedetta Mayomi, the Busia County Member of Parliament. We also have online Peter Wamoto, political analyst in Nairobi. Those will be joining us a little bit later, but for now we have with us in studio Mande Akol Amazima, a Pan-Africanist and political analyst whose reading of Africa's politics is commendable, and we shall be hearing from him very, very shortly as we get underway. I also know, or rather been informed, that Peter Mayomi is online right now. Welcome to the program, rather, Peter Wamoto. I must be very specific. My apologies for the misreading there. You're joining us from Nairobi. Welcome on Morning at NTV. Good morning, and I know it is a somber mood right now. We shall, of course, be hearing from you on exactly how the situation in Nairobi is. But if you must, bring us up to speed with how the news came through, what your thinking was at that moment, and how was the national pulse in Kenya when news of the passing of Raila Odinga came through. Mr. Peter Wamoto?
Yes, thank you. My name is Peter J. Wamoto, and when we received the news about former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's death, a somber mood engulfed the country, and it's really a sad morning even as we speak right now, because we've lost someone who has agitated for political freedom, for integrity, for justice, and for so many other good things. So yesterday when the news hit us that Raila Odinga had passed on, we were at a loss of words, and a lot of Kenyans didn't feel so okay with losing Raila Odinga in such a manner. We are expected maybe he would have said a last word or something, but you know, death never really knocks on the door, it just comes. So we are sad, and I take this opportunity to pass my condolences to the wife of the former Prime Minister, Mama Odinga, and the entire family. And even to the rest of Kenya, I extend my condolences.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks, Mr. Peter Wamoto. Also joining us online is Honorable Bernadette Mayomi, the Busia County Member of Parliament. Good morning, Madam. Honorable Bernadette Mayomi. Muyomi.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm speaking from Busia, Kenya, and very really sad following the passing on of the retired Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And just to say that we as Kenyans, and especially the young crop of Kenyans, starting off their political careers, feel deeply saddened. Yet again, we have a mixed feeling of appreciation, because without mincing my words, I will say, a lot of us are riding on the gains that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga fought for, and therefore it is a time of mixed feelings, celebrating a life rich of legacy around democracy, justice, and fighting for the rule of law, and also just feeling overwhelmed about what next, considering that we have strongly been foot soldiers and have grounded our political career around him. Thank you.
Much Honorable Bernadette Mayomi and Peter Wamoto for those opening remarks. I'll be returning to you very shortly so we can discuss at length the legacy of the man who is being described as a political colossus in Kenya. To the critics, well, some have come through to describe career as one that is encumbered, but we shall understand a little bit more as we go along. In studio, I have with me Mande Akol, a Mazima Pan-Africanist and a political analyst. Right now, as a Pan-Africanist, I can understand the enormous loss, a sense of loss that you are feeling, and many of the Pan-Africanists across the continent. News of Raila's passing, death is something that we expect. But like Peter Wamoto said, this is not how maybe other people should pass on. It is something that I find a little poignant.
Yeah, definitely these mourning moments, sad moments, not only for Kenya, but for the entire continent and the Pan-Africans. We must realize that Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga is deeply rooted in the Pan-Africanism. His father, Jaramogi Odinga, was one of the people that attended the 1958 All African People's Congress in Accra. Actually, yes, and he was the person who organized the Great Lakes region with the likes of Tom Mboya, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Kanyama Chume in Malawi. So, being a son to such a person, and he has actually walked in the footsteps of the father in preaching Pan-Africanism and being one of the great pillars of the Pan-African movement. Yeah, but also away from that, we really realized that he was an enigma in Kenya's politics. That he made the politics of Kenya worth following. Yes, it is because every other time that he was on the scene, yeah, the whole world was glued on what next for Kenya. Yes, what is happening in Kenya. And we shall realize that he really became a very significant world leader in Kenyan politics. That was in 2002. When he came up with the Kibaki Tosha. And we remember that Kibaki, during that election, he got an accident and was airlifted for treatment. Even the running mate of Kibaki, then Wamala Kijana, was also sick. So ideally, the person who destroyed Kenya, Kanu, and ushering in a new dispensation, showing that even a sitting party can be defeated, was Raila. So since then, he gave hope to the opposition across Africa that, look here, a united opposition can really defeat a ruling party.
Okay. Okay, that is interesting because in the readings of history, that is described as one of the most defining and
Moments,
electric moments in Kenya's history, ending the 40-year reign of Kanu, and something that put him at a position of a very critical player in Kenya's political history. Peter Wamoto, we know that Raila Odinga was a man that wore many hats. To the critics, he could have been a person who was more of a deal maker in the corridors of power, but for those who were ardent supporters and believers in his legacy, the ability to put country first was something that inspired very many in Kenya. And I believe even in his death, he has done the inspiring more than he has maybe done in his lifetime. Talk to us about the legacy of the man.
Yes, thank you. And as I've had Monday a call, Amazima from studio saying that, talking about the 2002 election, where Raila actually shelved his political ambitions to support Kibaki when he said Kibaki tosha. And that was a defining moment for the country. So Raila has always been selfless, even when he controversially lost the 2007 election. After he saw what was happening in the country and there was a lot of violence, he decided to take a step back, go and greet his friend Kibaki, and they signed a national accord for the sake of peace in this country. So the man, throughout his political career, has taken a lot of sacrifices for this country, and he has enabled us to enjoy the democratic space that we enjoy as a country right now. His legacy in politics will live on, and even as he has passed on, myself as an optimist, I know for sure that the legacy of Raila will live on, because young people through the Gen Zs, through the millennials, are picking up and have even already begun picking up from where he left. So we shall dearly miss the old man, but again, the country still has to move on in a peaceful way, in a way that he taught us to always put the country first. That is what Raila stood for.
Honorable Bernadette Muyomi, Raila Odinga was initiated into the politics of Kenya, I think should have been 1982, when a faction of Kenya's Air Force tried to topple President Arap Moi. The state's dragnet at that point in time fell wide, and Raila Odinga was netted and incarcerated for 6 years. And it's after when he came out of community maximum prison and began to forge a political career that has become as illustrious as we are discussing right about now. Do you think, Honorable Bernadette Muyomi, that Raila Odinga could have done, or rather did more for Kenya, not as president, despite the fact that he continued to seek presidency at least 5 times, than he would do as a sitting president? Honorable Bernadette, did you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much for the question. And as a political player and a reader of Kenyan history, there's one thing I always believe. Everybody in the political landscape has a role. And Raila, as a reformer, played a very critical role, pushing for reforms while in the opposition. And perhaps that was the best playground for him, looking at the kind of charisma he had, the kind of stamina to push for pressure. Sometimes I ask myself, just how much would he have achieved if he was on the side of government, where people are constantly asking him to do the same things he was pushing for? And I think sometimes it is only fair to say, when you are in the side of government, you will tend to see things from a totally different lens. Your challenges, your lived experiences become different compared to somebody pushing for reforms from outside. And so for me, the fact that in all these elections that we have seen Raila engage in, at one point or the other, for the sake of the nation, he has still ended up working with the government. And as a result, I think his critical role came out in the opposition and, of course, backed by the masses that he commands. But again, he has had a privilege of fast-tracking some of these reforms by being on the side of government. Things that many of us Kenyans would not have that privilege in. When we think about him joining hands with Moi, joining hands with Kibaki, joining hands, and now with our current president, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. To me, it speaks about a man who knows when to work with government to fast-track the very reforms that he has been fighting for. And just for the record, every time Raila has joined government, we cannot even accuse him of the fact that it was necessary for him to fast-track certain things, because as a result, we have experienced general inclusivity and just seeing heads of state live up to certain promises that seemed so far-fetched until when Raila began to work with them. And so for me, he has played a strategic role as a leader of opposition, and his ability to time when to engage with government on a strategic front is also a plus in terms of the reforms that he has pushed for. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me return to the studio. Monday, a call. When you listen to the stories and the readings of history describing Raila Odinga's ability to quickly pivot, especially when the grand vision of any one particular political vehicle that he could have chosen onto another in order to advance either his ideas or the ideals of any one particular movement that he could be leading at the time. That is commendable, no doubt. It is something that even shocked his allies when, after he had been incarcerated by President Moi, he came out to join him and begin to work. That is an ability for African politicians that was unique to him. I do not know whether his passing will leave a major void of an individual like that, or his own mentorship abilities have been able to leave people who will cover the gap.
No, Raila is somebody really who had special qualities. That first of all, he was a very good negotiator. Most opposition leaders, every other time they sit on the table with the ruling government, they are swallowed. But that was not Raila. When he came out to work with Moi, people thought that was his end. But he had his MasterCard left somewhere. That when he saw that what they had agreed with President Moi did not work out, he bolted out. And when he bolted out, he actually walked away with a number of ministers from Moi's government, including the then Vice President, Saitoti. Yeah. So that is how Raila is. And why most people believed in him is that he was a team negotiator. He was never selfish. That every other time he comes on board, he negotiates for everybody he has come with. Now, even the other things that what also has always made him outstanding is that look at the people that have actually fought Raila. Every other time their governments are coming to the end, they realize that they need him to survive, to move to the end.
That is right.
Yeah, because Moi, after the 1997 election, he realized that he needed a good number in Parliament to push his bills, and therefore he had no other option other than talking to Raila Odinga. Now look at Kibaki, his second term, because after the controversial 2007 election, Kibaki actually would not even move in Nairobi freely. He would not even move across the country freely. It's until they co-opted Raila, they had the Grand Coalition government, that he finished his term. Look at Kenyatta, his second term, when the grand swearing ceremony of Raila Odinga. Ideally, that has paralyzed everybody. When he came up with the economic war, where he said that they should sabotage Safaricom and all businesses owned by the Jubilee government. Within a week, the economy was collapsing. So Kenyatta had no choice other than to talk to Raila. Look at William Samoei Ruto. After falling out with the Kikuyu, he had no option. But you know what is also very amazing is that when Kenyatta was elected for his second term, he said, no, there's no handshake. There won't be any handshake. But just after a month, he was the person pushing for it. The same with William Ruto when he was swearing. He said, no, we cannot have a handshake. But he's the very person. And you remember Gachagua saying he has put all the roadblocks for Raila never to enter State House. But incidentally, it was Gachagua again who was by his oral block. So that was Raila, that he knew how to negotiate, he knew how to talk to who, when, and how for purposes of achieving national unity and also making sure that Kenya's democracy moves ahead, does not stagnate.
Peter Wamoto, looking at Kenya from Uganda as an outsider or as an observer, there are things that amaze us. The ability for politicians in Kenya to quickly shift gear and then form coalitions in order to advance any one ideal at any one point in time. It is totally different in Uganda, where we know people to belong somewhere. Any attempt to cross is seen as betrayal across board. Is it sufficient to say that Raila Odinga was the glue that held Kenya's politics up until now?
Yes, to answer your question, I think Raila was the glue that was holding Kenyan politics. My fellow guests in the show have spoken, and they've talked about a lot of great things that Raila did. One of the issues that is affecting us as Kenya sometimes, and this doesn't mean that I'm criticizing Raila or any other leader in Kenya, sometimes you find that after every election, there are usually some realignments, and most of those realignments are not based on how we want to promote, how we want to unite our country or to even champion development. Sometimes it's just the politicians being greedy and looking out for their own stomachs. Raila was a bit different. He used to observe the situation, and if he noticed that we were at the verge of anarchy, that's when he would step in and try to calm things, because he cared more for the country. But one thing that I would really like to end after his era has ended is the issue of shifting from one political party to another. And every election year, people forming new political parties. That is one of the things that is affecting Kenya negatively. Because if you count from the election in 2002 up until now, the political parties keep shifting. You might even find out that in the next coming election, maybe our president is planning again to create a new party or a new coalition, because we use political parties as vehicles to power, and then once we are done with them, we want to discard them. I was happy the other day the former president tried to revive Jubilee Party, and one of the contestants for the presidency in 2027, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, has already joined the party. So one thing that I would say that was a disadvantage to even Raila Odinga was that thing of once the election is over, maybe we want to form a new coalition, maybe we want to form a new, party or arrangement so that we can angle for power, and it really stabilizes us as a nation. I think maybe 3 or 4 parties, permanent parties, and we're good to go, not every time changing political.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Honorable Benedict Muyomo, you're a legislator, and Raila Odinga's role, especially when it comes to the making of the 2010 constitution in Kenya, cannot be understated. His legacy really is huge, and of course when you look at most of the critical pillars or features of the new constitution, devolved government, creating a system or rather that is hinged on national and county level authorities in a bid to decentralize power. We have the Bill of Rights that provides for a comprehensive framework that guarantees wide range of rights, including equality, human dignity, freedom of expression. Do you see that the objectives, the ideals, and the spirit of the Constitution as enacted in 2010 have been achieved, and Raila's legacy is something that you can look at and say it is a major positive?
Thank you so much. Having read history, in the Kenyan history, having understood some of the struggles that this country has gone in, starting from sessional paper of 1969, which was really skewed in terms of development, I think a lot has been achieved. Perhaps what we need to look at is our expectations. I say a lot has been achieved because we are transitioning from a system where development, public resources and development was skewed to who was in power. With the devolution, we as Kenyan citizens really have ourselves to blame if we do not elect the right leaders and hold them accountable to channel this distribution to the grassroots as was envisioned in the Constitution. As a woman, thinking about women's representation in public entities, I think it is a result of the emancipation that we've had after many years of dialogue. And at least today in Kenya, we have a rule that says, we have a law that is very clear. No more than 2/3 of any public entity should be from the same gender. And for me, that is the reason why I got my first opportunity to serve as a county executive in the county government of Busia. Because had it not been for affirmative action, which Raila fought for through the various entities he was in, I would not have enjoyed it. And then tapping into the question that you asked my colleague Wamoto, sometimes I think that the African politics needs to be allowed to take an African dimension. And when I think about Raila and his impact in creating a legacy, he is a man who has kept on reinventing a new vehicle every now and then. And as a Pan-Africanist, I'll say, if this is how reforms are coming about in Africa, so be it. We do not have to emulate a democracy that has stood with political parties for centuries. For us, Raila has taught us that you can do things on your own terms with a vision of remaining a transformative leader. Because I think what has enabled Raila to do is to be able to clench power in terms of influencing. Had he not metamorphosized with every other regime, I do not think he would have achieved what he has achieved. So as a political player, I keep asking myself, how African can we get with our political ideologies? And in terms of legacy, these are things that will be carried on. What I like about what Raila has left us with is that he has proven to us that it is possible. And so we are going to continue with the work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Benedict Muyomi, there for that perspective. Monday, when you listen to Honorable Benedict Muyomi and Peter Wamoto, that is pretty much the sentiment of many Kenyans, especially as they grapple with the mourning right now of a man who has influenced every aspect of the country's political history. But let me be very candid and say that politicians have their bad days, they have their good days, and we cannot run away from discussing those aspects that could, or an individual can say, were or are dark spots on individuals. The 2007 scenario, the one that brought Kenya to its knees, was widely seen as a miscalculation on the part of the politicians of the day, and Raila Odinga's seeming inability to compromise early enough could have led to the killings and the violence that did happen. If he were to do better at that time, what do you think he ought to have done?
I think, in my view, how he handled the situation was the best. and gave the right results.
That's right.
Because you needed to understand the Kenyan constitution then. That the Kenyan constitution then was that in case there is dissatisfaction from one of the presidential candidates, you would go to court and the winner, the purported winner, would be allowed to swear in. And the case would take forever to be settled. So ideally, that chaos ushered in a due dispensation that before the president is sworn in, if there is a court petition, it has to be first resolved. So that was one thing that came out. Secondly, of course, during that time, you'd also see that the Electoral Commission, headed by Samuel Kivitu, did not play fair. Because ideally, Raila won almost the entire country, only losing in one province, that is central, that is Kikuyu land. So you cannot say that surely somebody who has won in 7 or 6 because Kalonzo Musyoka won in Eastern then. You cannot say somebody who has actually won in 6 in the greater number, and somebody who has just won in one province really emerges the winner. So you realize that, and besides that, he had the majority of members of parliament. So the whole world really saw that actually the election did not go in line with what was really on ground, because ideally even the opinion polls had shown that Raila is winning, even the exit polls. So all this really showed that. So in my view, how he handled, how the situation was handled, but also you also need to know that in most cases as politicians, you may not have control over your supporters. Yes, because you remember he had really people like William Ruto on his side, and you see Ruto by that time was a real firebrand in the politics of Odinga, very aggressive. So he had people really he could not control. At times as a politician, you may not really control the emotions of your supporters, especially where they feel that really they have been denied an outright win. The other thing that maybe I also wish to say about Raila is that unlike many opposition leaders, for more than 2 decades, he has kept his support base. He has been the king of the town, urban centers in Kenya, Kisumu, Nairobi, Mombasa, and those are serious towns in Kenya, that he commanded the commercial centers of Kenya, and that made him a very indispensable player in the politics of Kenya.
Mr. Peter Wamoto, is there anything that you particularly regret about Raila's politics, how he played his cards, things or incidents where he missed the point entirely and could have been done better if he did, or if he were another person?
Yes, I think actually I've been a supporter of Raila for many years, and I've been voting for him. But towards the end of his political career, I think he got one thing wrong. When he chose to work with the government while the young people were actually agitating for things that he himself had been agitating for in so many years, I thought that was the biggest mistake that Honorable Raila Odinga might have done politically, because the current regime as it is quite unpopular with the masses. So Honorable Raila Odinga joining them actually broke so many young people's hearts, because even with that action, they still hold him in high regard. And when you hold someone in high regard and they kind of betray you, because most young people who are in the streets agitating for change felt betrayed by Honorable Raila Odinga, it's actually very heavy on them. But his legacy cannot be written off by just 1 or 2 mistakes that he might have done, because he's been pretty consistent with agitating for changes in Kenya. Even the freedom that we enjoy as young people to even go to the streets and agitate actually came from him when he helped get the new constitution in 2010. So yes, I have those regrets. And when he went that side and when he joined the government, I stopped being his supporter, but I still respect him. I still respect him for what he has done for the country.
No doubt. Many thanks, Mr. Peter Wamoto. Let me go to Honorable Bernadette Muyomi for closing remarks. Being a legislator, the attack on the parliament by the Gen Zs who were protesting aspects that were at the heart of Mr. Raila, as Peter Wamoto says, must have been a moment of reflection for you, as it was for many legislators in Kenya. As you mourn and pay your respects to Raila, what do you think should be the greater lessons from that incident?
Thank you so much. I think for me the greatest lesson is learn to listen to the people. The voice of the people is very strong, and as leaders we cannot continue to behave as if we know it all. When your people tell you something is not right, listen to what they're communicating. And leadership is not leadership, and political collaborations is not a justification to ignore the masses. And that perhaps the biggest lesson is, whether you collaborate or you don't collaborate, a time comes when the masses say enough is enough, and they will still have power over you, and you will give in to their demands. So for me, I think it just pushes us as leaders to continue being authentic and not play to the public gallery, because when all is said and done, there is always a price. And if it's not the people paying the price, it is we, the leaders, who will pay the price. And for that, I salute Raila for having sustained the fight for reforms to a point that other people also feel the confidence to carry on that mantle. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Bernadette Muyomi, MP for Busia County in Kenya. Thank you too, Peter Wamoto, political analyst based in Nairobi, for joining us. And we are emboldened by your perspectives and respect Raila Odinga following his passing yesterday. To you and indeed all the Kenyans, we commiserate with you and say, may the grace of our Lord be with you. Let me return to the studio and wrap this conversation up with Monday a call. There is something about Raila Odinga contesting 5 times for the presidency that is disturbing. And it goes back to his confrontation with his father, Jaramogi Raila Odinga. It is widely said that the man was cast by the father. Is that true? Quickly.
Well, of course, that is a talk that has been at every election. They've always said that.
Do you remember the father's specific words?
Yeah, definitely. There was that confrontation in 1992. Yes, there was that confrontation in 1992 where Raila felt that the old man should give way, and which really rubbed the old man
the wrong way.
Yeah. And remember, Raila was Jaramogi's favorite son, so much that even he was named after Jaramogi's mother. Amolo is Jaramogi's mother. So that is the confidence he had in him. Therefore, he didn't take it lightly. But also the other issue also, because remember, Odinga had also wanted, Raila had also wanted to go for Bondo, the constitution that was, that means the constitution that was occupied by the father. That's right. So out of that confrontation, that's when now he gets a new constituency, that is the Langata in Nairobi. So basically, that is said that way. But ideally, when you look at the 5 times, almost narrowly missing the crown, it really shows that perhaps the father could have said words that have stopped him from...
Well, we shall not claim the place of the gods of politics. This conversation has to end. But of course, coverage and perspective will continue to come through across the day in our